once again to the media program, Your View. This evening, I've got a very special guest, all the way from Nigeria, a man of many, many callings, a legal luminary, a pastor, and a politician. He is the former chairman of the NBA Oyo State Chapter. He is the senior partner of a very successful law firm, Prime Solicitor's Chambers. He is also the senior pastor of Rema Chapel in Bodija, Ibadan, Oyo State, and presently he is the Attorney General and the Justice Minister, Justice Commissioner for Oyo State. You're welcome, Sir Mr. Oluwaseun Abimbola.
Thank you very much.
We're glad to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Thank you very much. You're welcome to Ayula TV. Sir, what exactly brought you to the Netherlands?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think, I am here actually to sit on a panel of judges over an international criminal court supported moot competition for law faculties of various universities globally. It's an annual program of the ICC in collaboration with the International Bar Association and other partners, and it seeks to test the development and the advocacy skills of our learning friends in the various law faculties. And so we have about 60 to 70 universities all over the world from every continent participating in the competition, out of which a winner will emerge by Friday.
Wow.
The full court of the International Criminal Court.
I must say, for you to be one of the panelists, that is great.
We thank God, it's a privilege.
Which means my introduction as the legal luminary is right on point, eh? Fantastic. You're a man of many callings, you know. Which of these really suits you?
Well, I think as a human being, we are born for many things. Ultimately to serve the purpose God intended. And in the course of that journey, you find yourself being something for a season and another thing for another season, all channeled towards the fulfillment of an ultimate purpose and the mind of God. I believe over the years, I've served in different capacities, I've held different positions, I've practiced law for almost 30 years. I've been in private legal practice most of my professional life, and now I'm in public service. I also I've pastored for about 20 years as well. Wow. And I see all of that tied up in one form or the other when I stand to appear before any court of law and make any submission on law. I still stand wearing the cloak of who I am, even in the church. And when I stand in the church behind the pulpit to preach, I still stand like you're submitting before a court. Everything is intertwined.
So let's say one helps the other at all times.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I will just go straight into the situation in the country right now in Nigeria.
Yes.
Because today being the Democracy Day,
yes,
and the third anniversary of APC in government.
yes.
You know, that makes us even very lucky to have you around here, you know. As a man close to the seat of power in your state, or your state, would you say your government, in the government of APC led by Governor Ajimobi, has performed creditably well in your state so far?
I'm sure if you visit Ibadan now, you won't find your way there because
you're very right.
Huge network of roads that have emerged in the last 7 years. All the major entry roads into Ibadan have been dualized.
Wow.
Because your state is so close to Lagos, and we must benefit from that proximity in terms of trade, in terms of commercial development.
Just like Ogun State is doing right now.
So it was part of the agenda of His Excellency Governor Abimbola to ensure that Oyo State is not seen as a rural state, it's not seen as a civil service state, but begins to mature and come to the point that it's respected as a destination of choice, both for commerce, industrialization, and trade. And the programs of the governor, the projects that he had embarked on over the years, started with ensuring that there was peace and security. The program of the government of Governor Ajimobi stands on the base platform of peace and security. I'm sure if you were to consider your state 10 years or more back, you will know that it was regarded as a garrison under the seeming iron hand of a garrison commander. But when the governor came on board, the first thing he did was to disband and dislodge all the trouble spots, all the troublemakers, and bring in an Operation Bust, which he has sustained over the last 7 years of his administration, to ensure that anywhere in Oyo State, particularly in Ibadan, that you can go day or night, you can be at ease with the safety provided. In fact, if you get to Ibadan now, I was joking with one of my colleagues that it seems Ibadan wants to become a social spot because there are so many social clubs and restaurants that have emerged, particularly in the last 5 years. And of course, Ibadan, that we all used to say had no nightlife, people would go to bed at 7 p.m., suddenly has so much nightlife that you're asking yourself, why is this happening? But then it's a reflection of peace and security that makes someone think he can run a business even far into the night. Then you look at the various road projects. Almost all, like I said, almost all the major roads in Oyo State have been dualized. Even in the last 1 year, 5 new road projects have started in Ibadan, in Shaki, in Orua, in other Okeogun areas, in Iseyin, in Oyo, in Ogbomoso. So all the major cities now have dual carriageways entering them. And so that's to also expand the scope of development and make the place more economically accessible for anyone that might want to do business in those cities and towns across Oyo State. Then we look at education. One of the things that you probably remember, I'm glad you mentioned that you started school in Ibadan, because half of most of those who are in our generation and even beyond will trace their schooling to Ibadan. And we regard Ibadan as the intellectual capital of Nigeria. We find out that the first university is in Ibadan. The first of many things are in Ibadan. And then many people went to secondary school, either went to Ibadan Grammar School, Government College, Loyola College, and you find out that that's they might be anywhere in the world now, but their roots are in Ibadan. We realized that several years down the road, the standard of education had fallen. And one of the things this administration has done now is to introduce a school governing board model. We realize that it's impracticable to assume that government will be able to fund 658 secondary schools in Oyo State, not to talk of primary schools, and all at the same level of funding, teachers, infrastructure, and all the other amenities that make for a good and sound education. So government invited support from all stakeholders, and that was what led to the committee that midwifed by the instruction of His Excellency, the establishment of the school governing board. Now, the school governing board model that Oyo State adopted about 1.5 years ago, or 2 years ago now, has become a model. In fact, it's not just a model for other APC states. The federal government has signposted it. The UNESCO has signposted it to such an extent that it's become a course of study. And I won't be surprised if you begin to find people come from other countries to understudy how this works. And how does it work? So the school governing board is over every secondary school. It's constituted by old students of the school. It involves the current head boy or head girl, principal, Parent Teachers Association, the local government in the areas has a nominee, the community where the school is located has a nominee on the board. There's a religious body that has played significant role in the evolution of that school. As you know, there are mission schools, whether Christian mission or Islamic. The religious body that has been the principal contributor also has a nominee on the board. And it is the responsibility of this board not just to pull in resources or philanthropists from wherever they might be, but also to ensure proper oversight from the outside. We understand that the structure of the bureaucracy might not give sufficient coverage for you to be able to assess teachers are coming to class, teachers are doing their job and all. But when you have an external body like the school governing board, who are not government paid, who are not government under the government structure, there is a strong likelihood of an objective response to be able to deal with those issues and even to enhance discipline among staff. And that's the model we're running. And in the last NECO examination, Oyo State attained over 70% success, and I'm talking of 5 credits and more in that exam. We're coming from a background of having not passed 50% several years. And that's one of the things that the government has done. Akin to that is the realization that it is not just education, it's also character building. A total, complete education includes not just understanding the math and the English. And so we have what is called the Oyomesi program. The Oyomesi program is channeled at character development. And so that's also running side by side with the innovations and initiatives of the school governing board. So I'm looking at this being sustained even as we go into an election year. In the next 5 years, you probably will find Oyo State not just back as number 1 anywhere, but competing effectively with other institutions globally.
Well, you're almost talking as if you are the Commissioner for Education. I'm really surprised.
Because I was a member of the committee that midwifed the school governing board.
Fantastic.
So I'm quite aware of what's been going on. And I'm also serving in a capacity, my own alma mater is also in Oyo State. And I'm a member of the executive of the Old Boys Association. I know how much input we are giving to that school now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. There was this whole problem of the chieftaincy problem in Oyo State. I mean, in Ibadan. The chieftaincy title problem with the 21 chiefs being, becoming a very big problem later on, and the High Court declaring it unconstitutional, illegal, and of no effect later on, you know. You were the Justice Commissioner and the Attorney General, so you must have been very involved in the planning and the whole thing, you know.
Yes.
What actually happened? Can you shed more light on it for us?
Well, let me first start with a note of caution that my comments will be limited in some regard, because the case you mentioned is currently on appeal before the Court of Appeal, and I wouldn't want to say anything to prejudge the outcome. That being said, the case that was, well, the action of government was not targeted at Ibadan. Over the years, there had been several steps taken to improve and to enhance the position of the traditional institutions. Presently, as we speak, we would have probably not less than 60 to 70 applications from various monarchs across the state asking that their status be elevated to a beaded crown wearing status. And this is not far-fetched, because you know that the history of a nation called Nigeria, let's even go beyond Yoruba land now, and probably when you even go beyond even to a country like the Netherlands, nations emerge as empires. Over the years of modernization and structure and governance and democracy, the traditional institutions lost their political power, as it were, and they were more like social structures but still recognized. Now, but then you find out that there had been classification of hierarchy of monarchs also, which is recognized by the chief's law of the various states in Nigeria. Now, under the chief's law of your states, we also have that hierarchy. But then, historically, things have evolved, things have changed. If you look at a state like Lagos or Ogun State, all the other states that are neighboring states to your state, you will find out that there was a time that the Timiovede was under the hegemony of the Olubadan, historically. But when Osun State was created, you cannot say the Timiovede is still under an Olubadan. No. Why? Statehood has emerged. And so modernization has now separated by virtue of that. Ibadan used to control up to Ilesha. Right. But then these have become monarchs in their own right. Now if you come back home to Ibadan, Ibadan is made up of 11 local governments. The monarchy structure in Ibadan is not like in many other places.
Of course, because
we don't have a ruling house,
of course,
which is common in most of the other traditional institutions. But then Ibadan emerged historically as a war camp. And what I mean by that is it's not that it's a group of warlords that settled in a place that became Ibadan. And they will go to battle and come back, go to battle and come back. But because of the prowess of these men at that time, they conquered every surrounding village, town, city, or whatever. And that's why till today, Ibadan remains the largest city in West Africa, principally by conquest. It was by conquest that Ibadan expanded to such an extent that it entered Abeokuta, it entered Ilesha, it entered everywhere, just by conquest. Now, when these warriors were conquering surrounding villages, those villages pre-existed Ibadan. Some of those villages pre-existed Ibadan, but they became subjects of Ibadan by virtue of the conquest. Now, they remain Bales. Over the years, the stool of the Olubadan, which is similar to what you will find in the historical context of the Knights of King Arthur, where everybody sits around the table as a knight, but there's a first knight among all equals. That's how the Olubadan emerged. It was these warriors that decided in their own wisdom that, look, all of us have our own truths, but at least we should submit to one head. And so, by rotation, one person was the head, and that's the same person that became known as Olubadan. Now, these warlords are the ones that over the years became high chiefs in Ibadan. So you have 11 high chiefs. Each high chief sits as chairman of the traditional council of each of the 11 local governments in Ibadan. In other words, the same way you find a first-class chief in another state sitting as chairman of traditional council over maybe Atakumos West, is the same way a high chief in Ibadan sits as head over a local government.
1 minute. Will it be all right to say what Ibadan was, or what the government was trying to do was something like what was done in Ilefe, where they had so many high chiefs, and they were elevated to obas?
Exactly.
Okay, now, but what people are saying is this. In Ife, it was easy to do that because they don't become the Oni. Whereas in Ibadan, they already had a structure that was so peaceful. In fact, it's about the most peaceful structure in Yoruba land, where an Oba emerges without any fight, without any argument. Why then will you want to disrupt such?
Well, you see, that's part of the misinformation, that those who jumped on the issue and made it political created it. Now, why do I say that? There was never an attempt to disrupt that structure. The hierarchical structure of emergence of an Olubadan was never changed. What the government simply did was to set up a commission of inquiry under the Commission of Inquiry's law of Oyo State, which empowers the governor to set up a commission of inquiry into any matter that requires being inquired into. And the governor set up a commission of inquiry to look at the existing Olubadan Chieftaincy Declaration and make proposals. Now that committee sat for a number of weeks. They invited memoranda from all stakeholders. About 120 memoranda was received from all stakeholders from all walks of life. Out of the 120, not less than 90 were in support of the fact that it is necessary to have beaded crowns, more than one in Ibadan. If you go to Ijebuland, if the Awujale of Ijebuland stands, there are several Obas of Ijebu this and Ijebu that who stand alongside, who accompany him. And when they get to public functions, they get recognized as Obas in their own rights. They might not be at the same category as the Awujale, but they are Obas. Now these ones are not even, they are mere members of traditional councils. They don't head a local government traditional council. Unlike Ibadan, where each one of the high chief is equivalent to several Obas of many states in terms of the domain, in terms of the authority, in terms of the responsibility they carry. Yet, they are not called Obas. And that had been an issue for the past 30 years. I can say straight away that it's not this current governor that made the first attempt to implement this. This had been an issue since probably the advent of democracy in 1999. It would have been done in the administration of Governor Lamadeshina, but for similar political moves at that time, which truncated it. And that was why the governor, the courageous man, he knew the fact that this is something that the people wanted. This is something that would definitely, some political interest will want to stand against. But then, what has to be done has to be done. And let me give you an example. You see, there are many good things that would come out of this. And I'm telling you straight away that this is something that has come to stay. Many good things that will come out of it. A few years ago, some Obas and some persons in Osun State challenged the authority of the Owa Obokun to sit as chairman of traditional council over 5 local governments. Ilesha, Atakumonsa, Obokun local government, and a few others like that. Because as the Owa Obokun, there were of Ijesha land. There are about 5 local governments that make up Ijesha land. And they challenged the fact that constitutionally, as a traditional ruler, you're only head of 1 local government. You cannot sit over 5. And they won. The same issue was about to happen in Ibadan with the Olubadan sitting over 11. It was the wisdom of the elders that pointed out the fact that, look, instead of one Olubadan presiding over 11 and creating a constitutional issue, then these high chiefs, by virtue of their historical antecedents as the Olubadan in council, should be the ones sitting over the council. That was what led to the fact that the high chiefs sit over the traditional councils. It is only natural that a time will come that you cannot expect that by virtue of the status, by virtue of the authority, by virtue of the territory that they preside over, they can't remain high chiefs. It is for the enhancement of the position of Olubadan. They will also remain on the hierarchy. They remain on the hierarchy. By virtue of being an Oba, does not make them Olubadan until the time when the hierarchy moves to become Olubadan. So it does not disturb the hierarchy in any way. It only enhances the status, making the Olubadan an imperial majesty, and these ones their royal majesties. And then the Baales of the ancient towns and villages conquered by Ibadan, who had been Baales and had been pressurizing and requesting that at least they should, by now, they are older than the stool of the Olubadan itself, that they too should be wearing beaded crown in whatever form. And so they too were elevated to be their royal highnesses. So that was basically what the governor did. But then it was politicized by those who had vested political interest. Nobody has been disadvantaged. Nobody has been rendered irrelevant by virtue of the change. And so there's really no need for the hue and cry.
From all you have said, let me say, from the education, the chieftaincy issue, and all the rest, one thing I've discovered these days, the government did not do enough, or have not been doing enough, putting out information to the public. And that characterizes the APC government generally right now. You know, they've not been out there telling people what they are doing, what they're about to do. I mean, what on each project that they've embarked on, this is the way we want to do it. The information has been very bad, and that is why the public is not receiving them very well. And I can see from all you said, these are noble causes, these are things that are very important. Yeah. But the information is not out there. Enough information is not out there, and that is why people are not receiving it the right way. What do you think the government should start doing?
Well, thank you very much. And you see, communities take, I would say, the picture and the appearance of those who try to seize on information infrastructure. I would say to you that in this, the populace of Lagos, the populace of Abeokuta, populace of Ibadan, populace of any other place differ in many ways. And the same way, I would say that it's not that the information is not out there. The sophistication of I would say a section of the audience also dictates how things are immediately received. For instance, the general people of Ibadan are not impacted one way or the other by the story of the traditional ruler. It's not as if they get something from the traditional institution.
And
just a minute. It's not as if, but those who belong either to a lineage, maybe those who are mortgagees, definitely have a stake in it. And they were very well informed. But then, like I said to you before, a few people who decided to go political about it, decided to misinform and turn around the story. But then with times and audience like your media group provides, I'm sure the truth of it is coming. The same thing a lot of them said when the governor was going to initiate the education reform. They said the governor wanted to take over and buy the school. That was the misinformation. The same political elements so that until it became apparent to everybody that this was a noble cause. It's got nothing to do with that, and that has changed the narrative. And I'm sure this will also change when people begin to see the truth more than the misinformation that other elements are trying to put out.
We in the press still believe that
there needs to be more.
There need to be more.
Yes,
you know, there's so much that needs to be done to get people informed. You know,
absolutely.
Because it's like the information is hoarded. You know, amongst a few set of people, and they're not helping out. That's not helping out in any way. Yes. So, okay. To move to the next question. Now, I'd like to ask about your department, your ministry. You've got some signature programs that you're embarking on in your state, and I must say I commend them very well.
Thank you very much.
I mean, if your state can go as far as to initiate programs like community service punishment for offenders, passing laws against land grabbing bills, you know, and multi-door courts. I think those are very noble programs, you know, and I'm sure you still have many more that we will not be able to cover today, you know. But can you tell us more about all these things and how you came about them?
Thank you very much. Part of the reform agenda of the governor, Senator Abimbola was not just to, is generally widely, fondly called the builder of modern Oyo State. And that's not just reflected in the infrastructure, but equally reflected in every other sector. And as part of the mandate His Excellency gave to me when I was appointed as Attorney General, which was to ensure that there is a remarkable change and reform in the judicial system as well. That was what led to some of the things that you have mentioned. And one of the things we were able to do with the support of the Oyo State House of Assembly was to initiate several legislative interventions. Because any reform you want to carry out that is left at the altar of government policy might not last, by virtue of the fact that a new administration can come and with a signature change the policy. But when you institutionalize reform by virtue of legislative interventions, then it becomes something that can be built upon by coming administrations. And one of the areas that we targeted mostly was to look at the criminal justice and the civil administration of justice system. The criminal justice system is plagued with a lot of delays. And so what we first did as soon as I came in was to pass a new legislation changing the entire criminal procedure law to the administration of criminal justice law, which introduced a lot of innovative clauses and processes that will enhance the work of the police, the work of the prison system, the court system, the prosecuting system, and gave a lot of responsibilities to these institutions, not just in terms of the actual carrying out of the task, but in supervision as well. We also initiated a program for a fast-track prosecution so that we can reduce substantially the awaiting trial suspects that are in detention for years before they are eventually their cases are eventually decided. And so we issued out processes that will enhance and fast-track the prosecution of awaiting trial suspects. It was also in the light of doing that that we realized that there are people in prison who are there for no just cause. And so we, working with the Chief Judge, we've been able to initiate moves to deal with that on one hand. On the other hand, we also passed the Community Service Bill, which is a law that is meant to provide for alternative sentencing that is not necessarily imprisonment for offenders in minor cases.
Just like we have here in
Exactly. So that they don't have to be in prison and then become hardened, mixing with hardened criminals for more.
By the way, how many states in Nigeria right now are copied this, you know? Because I was so surprised when I came about it on your program.
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, I'm only aware of Lagos and Oyo State. I am not aware. It's possible that some other states might have initiated something, but I'm only aware of Lagos and Oyo State. And then we also looked at the civil system, and we realized that the congestion, even in the dockets of our judges, is not something that the new civil procedural rules alone can deal with. So we created an avenue that will allow cases that come to court to pass through 3 different doors, not just the door of litigation and get bogged down in court, but created an avenue to have the mediation system as well as an arbitration system. And so when your cases get filed, they get processed and get sent through these channels for resolution. And we are training mediators massively right now. All kinds of persons who might be interested. We're offering professional training. I'm a trained mediator. I was trained in London in 2004 in mediation. I've been sitting on the panel of neutrals of the Lagos Multi-Door Court since 2005. And so I quite very much appreciated the input of mediation as a separate track and how it can complement the judicial system. And that's why I tried to introduce that in furtherance to the mandate given to me by His Excellency to ensure, and that was commissioned about 2 months ago, and the system has kick-started in Oyo State. We also have a small claims mediation center at the Ministry of Justice, which we have also expanded now. We are going to, in a few weeks, kick off the branch zones, the branches of the Citizens Mediation Center in Oyo, in Ogbomoso, in Shaki, in Igbora, so that those people living in those areas will not have to come to Ibadan to get mediation services, but they will also have it close to them in the various zones where they ordinarily reside. And so these and more. Over the last 2 years, we must have passed nothing less than 40 to 50 different legislations touching on various aspects of the lives of citizens of Oyo State, business, commerce, development, to cure several mischief, including the one you mentioned, the anti-land grabbing law. We have also passed that. We realized that some of them who were ordinarily operating in Lagos and Ogun State started filtering into Oyo State, and that's why we passed the law, and that's already been implemented, always with the police talking to them about full implementation of that law to be able to cure that mischief, in our society. There are a lot of things that I'm sure that God willing, we will also be able to do. One of the signature laws that we have also created, well, I would say amended, is that we have amended our High Court law. One of the things I realized quickly that occasioned the delay are interlocutory appeals, and they usually stem from jurisdictional issues. And I realized that could not be cured except the state High Court law was amended. And so your state is now the first state that has amended the High Court law to give the state High Court the power of transfer, so that even if the High Court of the state does not have jurisdiction, the case will not get struck out and then go and appeal all the way to Supreme Court. They will simply transfer it to the court that has jurisdiction. Just like the Federal High Court has that power, the National Industrial Court has that power, but state high courts generally don't have that power under their own laws. So we have looked into that, and we have amended our laws to be able to create and liberalize the space and create better access to justice.
Of all these laws and edits and whatever you want to call it that you've introduced, which one are you which one are you proud of that is very successful so far?
I'm proud of all of them. Absolutely, all of them. Because, but the implementation of laws is the second phase. And that's the phase we are with respect to all of those laws. And all these laws are already being implemented by the various users, lawyers, the courts, the police, the prison system, and even citizens. There are so many citizens that write us petitions when their land is being invaded by some people. Why? Because they are aware that there is now a law. Yeah. Before, they would probably simply run away, but now they can take a stand and trigger the legal process. And we also forward those petitions immediately to the Commissioner of Police for immediate investigation. And I've also mandated the necessary institutions that they should implement the law to the letter. It's no longer fanciful for us to get people charged for malicious damage when they invade another man's property. Malicious damage is almost like a misdemeanor. It does not cure the mischief. It does not serve as a deterrent. Yeah. But the anti-land grabbing law will be a stronger deterrent. And so, under the administration of criminal justice law, magistrates have the powers, when they look at the facts before them, even to unilaterally amend the charge before them if they realize that, no, you should not have been charged for this. This is what they should have been charged for. They amend it and then allow the defendant to plead to it, and the case goes. So that is to substantively check the menace.
Fantastic. I'd like to know your views about this state police issue in Nigeria, this debate about state police. What do you think about it?
Well, it is a debate that is ongoing, but then if you look at the fact that Nigeria runs a federal system, a federal structure, and if you look at other countries that have a similar structure, state police ought not to have generated so much debate. It's just that sometimes within the context of the Nigerian environment, a lot of times initiatives that are novel are perceived as initiatives that might favor a group or a section or some interest, rather than seeing it as a novel initiative but that will serve the good of all. And that's one of the things that I think that's generated the debate on state police over the years. But you can see from the rhetorics we are beginning to get that some groups and some sections of this country that hitherto opposed it blatantly are beginning to see the need for it. And so I guess with a lot more advocacy, a lot more push, and with the willingness of our National Assembly to effectively implement the necessary constitutional changes, I'm sure that a true federal system will emerge.
So if I understand you, you are for it?
Absolutely.
Listening to you all along, you speak like a politician. Are you a politician?
So I will answer your question by saying that if you regard me as a politician by virtue of the fact that I hold a political office, then I am. But then I would also say that I am also a professional sitting in a political office.
Understood. But that still doesn't get to the root of it. Would you consider yourself a politician?
By all means. If I hold a political office,
That is more like it, sir. That's more like it, you know. Which brings me to the next one, which is: do you have any political ambition? I mean, for higher office, do you aspire to, like, pick up one of these seats very soon?
Well, you see, my philosophy in life, I handle anything I hold loosely. Yes, you might have ambition, you might have aspiration, you might have expectations, but except the Lord builds the house, you labor in vain. And so I would say that everything is in the hands of God. I will not say I don't, and I will not say I am striving for any. I will simply say all in the hands of God. Whatever God desires of all of us, He will make of us.
But left to you, would you like to?
I'm already holding one, so if the opportunity or the privilege comes and the Lord so ordains it, why not?
Fantastic. That's more like it. I like that. Because listening to you, I think you will serve the good of the public if you aspire for something
Thank you very
close
much.
to that. Now, moving along, how would you assess so far? I want to go back to the old question I asked. Where do you place the APC in the past 3 years? Considering that today as a democracy day, what would you say the APC has achieved in the past 3 years?
Thank you very much. Well, Nigeria continues to evolve. It is unfortunate that when we look back at the potential of a nation like Nigeria, and we look at where we are, we have a lot more expectation with respect to where we ought to be as a nation. And this is not far-fetched when you begin to trace our history of how we got here. And you know, the easiest thing to do is to destroy or to break down a building. You can break down one building in one day, but if you were to rebuild that building, it will take you weeks and months, possibly years, depending on the kind of building you're constructing. And so when you look at the story of Nigeria and where we started from, and the long years of military rule, and the physical, the psychological, the social interruptions such adventures created for the people. I'll give you an example. The average Nigerian citizen now is not a negotiator of rights and interests. And what do I mean by that? If, for instance, somebody owes you money and you know a police officer, you are likely to go and report to the police and say, let the police arrest you. Why? We have been militarized. So the average thought that comes through the mind of the average Nigerian is to take things forcefully, rather than negotiate your way through, rather than looking for a civil way of dealing with it. And so when people look at the kind of resistance you get from with respect to policies and changes introduced by government, it's because we are coming from that militarized experience over the years. Secondly, when we came into a democratic norm in 1999, today we're celebrating 19 years of uninterrupted democracy, the longest we've had since independence. You will notice that over the 19 years, we have contested several challenges to our democracy. We faced the issue of the National Assembly trying to take over the operations of local governments. It was contested all the way to the Supreme Court, until the Supreme Court established the fact that local government operations is not under the direct supervision of the National Assembly. Now, why will the National Assembly want to take over local government? The same mentality of a militarized, unified, unitary system, unitary structure. You take it from there, you look at other challenges that we have had to contest, whether by virtue of legal processes in court or by virtue of agitation by men, and you see that we are gradually evolving as a democratic environment. And so when you go back to the 29th of May 2015, when the APC government took over government, you know that we were coming into an experience that had been taken over by a different party, a different culture, a different mindset that had ruled the country for 16 years. And you'd have expected that in 16 years, we should have struggled over some of the teething problems, the foundations that we could be building upon a skyscraper ought to have been laid. But then you find out that it is the APC government that has come that is relaying those foundations. And that's why you find ourselves that we made so much money during the boom of oil between 2012, 2013, and yet out of all the nations of the world that had the same kind of boom experience, only Nigeria and Venezuela went down at the time of boom. Why? It was a factor of how we manage our resources. And so we now find the APC government coming into the administration at a time when there was a crash in the price of oil, there was a crash in currency, and everything had gone down. But you can see that as at today, we've come out of recession. I think that is a plus that we should give to the current administration. Because if we had remained in recession, perhaps we would have gone down the routes of some other countries who were and still are.
Well, we continue to hear that we're out of recession.
It's not a matter of hearing.
Well, what's on the street is that we're out of recession. What's from the government is that we're out of recession. But from a common man on the street, it has not touched them. We've not seen the dividends of being out of recession or of the change promised by APC. And it's biting really hard. What do you think?
Well, let me speak from this point of view. By no means will you solve all the problems at the same time. And by no means can you get all the solutions in at the same time, all in 3 years, particularly what had been established and kicked up over time. The starting point is to stabilize the general economic environment, which has been done by the government. The next level will begin when you begin to see how it triggers down, how the stability maintained at the macro level of the economy triggers down to the micro level that myself, yourself, and everyone on the streets having a corner shop or having some business running can begin to feel the impact of that development. And I think that that's the stage where we are now. That's why we find several initiatives of government in agriculture, in diversification of the economy, which directly impact the masses. Those are the issues that we are beginning to see this government introduce. We are no longer focusing on oil, where there's a new review being done with respect to obligations of all citizens to tax commitment, and that's how you begin to evolve as a nation, not just a nation of people that have that demand performance by their government, but are equally willing and ready to perform their own obligations to their nation state.
Yeah, on the issue of security, which I think is where a lot of people are talking. It's the talking point right now in Nigeria. I think that is the area where APC has really failed the masses, you know. And I mean, from the north to the east to the west, there's just so much issue on security, you know. What went wrong?
Well, APC has failed. Let me also again take you back to when the government, this administration came in. At that time, 5 states in the north were already annexed by Boko Haram.
Yeah, but at the same time, the APC promised that they were going to make sure that does not be this. And right now, we're fighting the issue of the, what's it called?
Let me say this. When I said 5 states were already taken over, I'm not speaking in the context of forays. I'm speaking in the context of taking over land territories.
Of course, we know.
That was what this government inherited. But immediately this government came on board, they were all dislodged. They could no longer lay claim to any territory.
But we immediately moved to another war.
And so, what then happened was that you find forays of incursions, which you also see in several countries. It's not that is peculiar to Nigeria. Even in the West, in Europe, you also have such, but they don't have any territory. And that's the kind of thing that we still have. And I'm sure with the assurances that our military and the security agencies have given and the efforts being put into dealing with these menace, I'm sure that sooner than later, we'll begin to see full control assumed over all these other remaining areas.
What is the position of your state on grazing and ranching?
Well, the position of the government of Oyo State, as mentioned, as stated by His Excellency the Governor, is simple. Presently, we have before the Oyo State House of Assembly a grazing law. What that law proposes is simply to ensure that there cannot be open grazing in Oyo State. If that used to happen, by virtue of the fact that there were not that many number of cattle grazing, it was not disturbing anybody. But now it has become an issue, and it has a potential of escalating. And so the position of the state is you cannot have open grazing, but the state is willing to support the provision of ranching. So if people want to have ranches, you can apply to the state, and you can get allocated portions of land where you can keep your cattle and raise your cattle and graze your cattle within the boundaries of your ranch. And that's the global standard that operates anywhere. And I believe that's the kind of thing that we will begin to see. And the governor has not only looked into ensuring this is done, he has taken a further step. And indeed, I'm not sure whether you're aware that His Excellency was here in this country a few months ago and had a couple of discussions with business interests here to be able to, because the Netherlands is well reputed for milk and all the cattle and all that. So His Excellency was here to meet with the relevant various business groups. With the effect is to be able to have some level of joint venture operations ongoing in Oluseun. So if government is not just talking but is ready to put its money where its mouth is, I believe that other citizens who want to engage in the business of cattle rearing would also follow suit when seeing that the government itself is blazing the trail.
Fantastic. Now moving on to 2019.
Yes.
The political stage is becoming very charged right now. Let me talk over your state first. In the past few weeks, there's been this tussle between, especially during the wards election and the local government. I don't know what you call it.
Congresses.
Congresses, yeah, the congresses, where we had the governor and the communication minister, Alaji Shitu, having this tussle over who is who and what has to be done and whatever. What actually happened and what is the situation right now?
Well, let me say that irrespective of what you might have heard, read, all the persons mentioned are still members of one family, of course, APC. And whatever happened is just the normal political challenges, the jostling for relevance that people at this time and in this season ordinarily try to do. And it's not peculiar to your state. It's not peculiar to this current administration or to dispensation. It's not peculiar to Nigeria. Whenever you approach an election here, across oil divides in every country, there will definitely be a jostling for position and a posturing for office. In Oyo State, you probably have maybe 30 to 40 governorship aspirants. The gentleman you mentioned, he's just one of them. So the same way he's jostling, the others to adjust. So it comes with the terrain. I don't see any significant issue happening.
Okay, if you say so. Anyway, another area that is so important to everyone right now is, what do you think about the many youths currently clamoring to be a part of the political situation in Nigeria, come 2019? What's your view?
I think it's a good development. And let me say straight away that there was never a time that the laws of the Federal Republic of Nigeria hindered the youth from participating. Indeed, if you look at the Constitution, there is no limitation in terms of saying that somebody has to be 50. No. Once you're 25, you can run for office. Different kinds of offices anyway. So there was never a time that the laws of this country hindered youth from participating.
So however, does it mean that the youth were not aware of it, or why then was there the law that happened in the National Assembly and all the states where they had to come up with that bill concerning the participation of youth in elections?
Well,
the age limit.
I haven't seen the bill to know exactly what is the novelty.
Yeah, but Oyo State did pass it.
No, it's not.
I think 24 states, or was it 35 states, or whatever?
It's proposed as an amendment, yes, perhaps, to the Constitution. But then the issue is not so much as hindering or limiting, but providing a platform, just like women too had proposed, and the fact that there should be an affirmative criteria or an affirmative action as to the minimum level or number of women that should be in government. Those are the kind of things that we're beginning to get. But I think the more important part of our political terrain is not so much in the law, but in the structure. The structure of political parties, the structure of our communities, and the structure of governance. You find out that those who had been don't leave, and they have control of the political structure. And except the younger elements begin to challenge within the existing structures and demonstrate their relevance, you might find out that it's not so much as being prevented, but you don't pick it up by the side of the road. You will have to fight for it. You will have to struggle for it. You will have to challenge the status quo. And in all the countries of the world where you have found younger elements emerge as president or emerge as in any capacity, you will see that it was a product of a challenge to the status quo. And I think it's a good thing that we have such an awareness being created among the young people in Nigeria generally, to be able to also contend. The only other point I'd like to make is to encourage our young people that as you challenge for office, determine to do it differently. Because there will be no reason why you put power in the hands of a young person who is going to do exactly what the people he's complaining about have done. And so I want to encourage all our young people, if you have the privilege or the opportunity to serve in any capacity, whether it's an elective office or it's an appointed office, demand it of yourself to make a difference. Demand it of yourself to demonstrate and open the space for other younger people to come in. Because if you use the office well, then there is a likelihood that the next person to come in will also come from the same age bracket. But if you don't use it well, you shut the door to others. And that is a responsibility that we all have as young people.
Where do you stand on voting for the Nigerians in diaspora?
And I think that with the continuous discussions ongoing about the diaspora voting, ultimately it is something that we should have. Those in diaspora should be able to vote without them having to come back home to a physical polling.
So you think if not in 2019, at least 2023, it should be a possibility?
Hopefully, and I'm sure that INEC and the necessary structures of the National Assembly are working on such.
Good. Now, let's go to your other calling, which is the Christian area. You know. Now you are the pastor, the senior pastor of the Rema Chapel.
Yes.
And the current issue or the current controversy going on all around Nigeria and beyond is the issue of tithe. Where do you stand?
That's interesting. Well, I've read, I've heard about a lot of comments. The informed and the uninformed have made about the issue of tithing, and I see diverse interpretation of the scriptures in Malachi chapter 3 and several other scriptures that men have given diverse interpretation. But you see, I don't see any controversy there, except the ones created by the advocates of such. For me, just like your faith in God is a relationship with God. If you believe you shouldn't tithe, don't tithe. At the end of all ages, unfortunately it might be a bit late to make amends. At the end of all ages, you will see the light. You will see the truth. I believe that as a child of God, as a Christian, that I'm supposed to pay tithe. I believe, and I do, and I've done that now for decades. And nothing is going to change that, irrespective of what anybody posts online or does. It's a fellow or persons who advocate to the contrary, feel strongly about their views. Well, the word of God is in your heart as it is in mine, and the Spirit of God bears witness with our spirits what exactly is the correct interpretation. So I always say to people that when a person tells you God told me XYZ, who am I to say to you that God didn't tell you? So if you believe that your interpretation is given to you, that's your correct interpretation as inspired by God, good luck to you. But as for me and my house, we tithe.
That is really clear. Well, I think there's no other way to say it than for you to make yourself clear about it, and you've done that. And that, I believe, is the position of your church, Rema Chapel. Absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah, what word do you have for Nigerians in diaspora? What do you want to leave for us?
Well, you see, I was quite impressed when I met you, and you have this media organization, and I was for a moment wondering, so what is it about? I'm quite impressed with the work that a lot of Nigerians are doing across the globe.
Thank you.
And I must encourage you to keep up the good work. The narrative about Nigeria among other nations is at variance with reality in most cases. But I believe that it is the Nigerians in diaspora who are the mirror by which other citizens of other nations can perceive what Nigeria is and what Nigeria has become. And so if Nigerians in diaspora are good ambassadors, naturally people will want to go to the nation where they have seen such leading lights emerge from. And that's the spirit that I believe every citizen of the Federal Republic of Nigeria residing in any part of the world should carry. Be an example of everything good, an example of everything that our national anthem and our pledge represents in the place where we are. Let's be a beacon of light. We are not just giant of Africa, we're a global voice, and we must make that impact felt positively wherever we are.
Fantastic. What has been your assessment of the Netherlands since your arrival?
Yeah, well, I've been here before, and actually I use Schiphol as a hub if I find myself flying to the west. But I think it's an old country too, and of course, like most European countries, things work better, and they are warm people. Everyone have interacted with colleagues at the bar, members of the bench, been wonderful. It's also a place where there are a lot of foreign citizens residing.
It's a bunch of many faces.
Yes, because of the various international organizations and institutions represented here. And I think that's a welcome development by the nation of Netherlands, opening its doors to an international sphere. And I'm sure that we'll be back here soon enough. Many other events.
We'll be speaking with Barrister Oluwaseun Abimbola, the Attorney General and the Commissioner for Justice in Oyo State. Thank you so much for coming, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being with you.
Thank you so much. We hope to see you very soon again.